The Bolian assassin snarled in defiance, his shattered arm hanging limply at his side as the muzzle of Sergeant Tyler Brown's plasma rifle pressed against his skull. Brown's finger tightened on the trigger, ready to end the alien's life and protect the helpless human colonists on Zephyrus. But in a shocking display of mercy that left Antares stunned, the battle-hardened soldier lowered his weapon. Antares, the most lethal operative in the Bolian elite command, had never failed to eliminate a target. Ruthless and efficient, he infiltrated the remote settlement under cover of darkness, prepared to unleash a devastating neurotoxin and exterminate every last human. But Brown, a cunning warrior with razor-sharp instincts, detected the intruder and laid a trap, critically injuring the assassin and destroying his toxin delivery system in a ferocious firefight. Now, as Antares recuperated under heavy guard in the human medbay, an uneasy truce settled over the colony. Brown monitored the assassin's every move, knowing Antares was merely biding his time, secretly studying the human's weaknesses as he healed. The colonists fortified their defenses and desperately requested reinforcements from Earth, fearing the Bolian Empire was preparing a full-scale invasion. In the heart of the besieged outpost, an intense battle of wits and wills raged between Brown and Antares. The fate of Zephyrus, and perhaps all of humanity, hinged on the complex interplay of suspicion, cultural misunderstanding, and the faint possibility of an unlikely alliance between two warriors from vastly different worlds. As tensions mounted and the threat of all-out war loomed on the horizon, one thing became clear. The future of human-Bolian relations would be forever shaped by the chilling events unfolding on this distant, unforgiving planet. As Antares lay in the medbay, his body slowly mending from the grievous injuries inflicted by Sergeant Brown, his mind raced with a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. The human soldier maintained a constant vigil, his resolute expression never wavering from the Bolian assassin. Despite the uneasy truce that settled over the colony, the air crackled with tension, a palpable reminder of the fragile balance between two ancient enemies. Brown, driven by a relentless need to protect the innocent colonists under his charge, engaged Antares in cautious conversations, probing for any insight into the Bolian's motives. At first, the assassin remained tight-lipped, his responses clipped and evasive. But as the days stretched on, a picture began to emerge of a warrior molded from birth to view humans as the ultimate threat, a plague to be eradicated at any cost. Beyond the walls of the medbay, Governor Elias Hawkins worked tirelessly to fortify the colony's defenses. The evidence they uncovered painted a chilling picture. The assassination attempt was merely the opening salvo in a much larger Bolian offensive. Hawkins, a skilled diplomat with a keen understanding of interstellar politics, sought to open communication channels with Bolian leadership, desperate to prevent the outbreak of all-out war. As Antares lay confined to his bed, he found himself observing the humans more closely than ever before. Their resourcefulness in the face of adversity, their ingenuity in adapting to the harsh conditions of Zephyrus, and their capacity for compassion toward one another. These were qualities he had been taught were weaknesses, flaws to be exploited. Yet here, among these supposed enemies, he saw a strength and resilience that challenged everything he had ever known. One day, as Brown conferred with a medic just outside the medbay door, Antares overheard a conversation that shook him to his core. The true nature of the Zephyrus colony was laid bare. These were no conquerors or aggressors, but refugees fleeing persecution and seeking a new life among the stars. The revelation hit Antares like a plasma blast, shattering the very foundation of his beliefs about the humans. As doubt crept into his mind, Antares found himself questioning the unwavering loyalty that had driven him for so long. Brown, sensing the shift in the assassin's demeanor, began to share glimpses of his own past, the events that had led him to become a protector of the innocent and a guardian of the colonists. A tenuous understanding began to form between the two warriors, a bridge spanning the gulf of centuries of mistrust and hatred. But just as this fragile connection started to take root, an unexpected development shattered the precarious peace. A Bolian infiltration pod breached the colony's perimeter, its sleek black hull gleaming in the harsh Zephyrus sunlight. From within emerged a figure that sent a chill down Antares' spine. Zara, his former apprentice and a ruthless assassin in her own right. Zara, her eyes burning with the fierce loyalty to Bolian command that Antares once shared, had been sent to complete the mission he had failed. She was a lethal instrument, honed to eliminate any obstacle in her path, including her former mentor, should he stand in her way. As the colony erupted into chaos, alarms blaring and colonists scrambling to defend their home, Brown and Antares found themselves facing a new and formidable adversary. The sergeant, his plasma rifle at the ready, prepared to meet this latest threat head-on, while Antares grappled with the consequences of his failure and the realization that he had been fighting for the wrong side all along. The stage was set for a tense confrontation, one that would test the tenuous understanding forged between Antares and Brown. As Zara advanced, her own plasma rifle humming with deadly intent, the two warriors were forced to navigate the treacherous waters of loyalty, betrayal, and the potential for redemption in the face of overwhelming odds. The fate of Zephyrus, and perhaps the future of human-Bolian relations, hung in the balance, dependent on the choices made in this pivotal moment. The medbay door slid open with a hiss, and Antares bolted upright, his muscles tensing, despite the pain that lanced through his healing body. Zara stood framed in the doorway, her lithe form silhouetted against the flashing emergency lights. Her eyes locked onto Antares, cold and unforgiving. "Mentor," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "I've come to finish what you started." In that moment, Antares made his choice. With a swift motion that belied his injuries, he ripped the medical sensors from his skin and lunged for the nearby equipment tray. His hand closed around a laser scalpel, just as Zara raised her plasma rifle. "Zara, stop!" Antares shouted, diving behind a biobed as energy bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. "You don't understand what's really happening here." The colony's alarms blared, and Antares heard the pounding of boots in the corridor. Sergeant Brown burst into the room, his weapon at the ready. "Get down!" he yelled, unleashing a barrage of covering fire that forced Zara to take cover. Antares locked eyes with Brown, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, the Bolian assassin darted from his hiding spot, using the distraction to close the distance to Zara. She whirled to face him, but Antares was already inside her guard. They grappled fiercely, the laser scalpel a deadly gleam in Antares' hand. "Listen to me," Antares grunted, struggling to subdue his former apprentice. "These humans, they're not our enemy. They're refugees, seeking a new home. Everything we were told was a lie." Zara's eyes widened in shock, but her training took over. She drove her knee into Antares' side, exploiting his injury. He stumbled back, gasping in pain. Brown seized the opportunity, tackling Zara from behind. The three of them crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and weaponry. Antares scrambled to his feet, snatching up Zara's fallen plasma rifle. "Sergeant!" he called out, tossing the weapon to Brown. The human caught it deftly, training it on Zara as Antares pinned her arms behind her back. "You're making a mistake," Zara snarled, struggling against Antares' grip. "You're betraying everything we stand for." Antares leaned in close, his voice low and urgent. "No, Zara, we've been betrayed by those who sent us here. Look around you. These are not conquerors or monsters. They're people, just trying to survive." As if to underscore his point, a group of human colonists rushed into the medbay, armed with makeshift weapons. Their faces were etched with fear and commitment, but there was no bloodlust in their eyes, only the primal urge to protect their home and families. Brown kept his weapon trained on Zara but addressed the colonists. "It's under control. Get to your designated safe zones and wait for the all-clear." Antares watched as the humans filed out, struck by their discipline and trust in Brown's leadership. He turned back to Zara, whose resistance had begun to falter. "We have a chance here," Antares said, his grip on her loosening slightly. "A chance to end this conflict before it consumes both our peoples. But I need your help." Zara's eyes darted between Antares and Brown, confusion and doubt warring on her face. "What are you proposing?" she asked warily. Before Antares could respond, Governor Hawkins's voice crackled over the colony's communication system. "Attention all personnel. I've made contact with Bolian High Command. Counselor Zephyr has agreed to a ceasefire. All Bolian forces are to stand down immediately. A heavy silence fell over the medbay. Zara's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. Antares released her arms and stepped back, his eyes never leaving her face. "It seems," Zara said quietly, "that I have much to learn about the true nature of our mission here." Brown lowered his weapon, though his posture remained alert. "And we have much to learn about each other," he added, glancing at Antares, "if we're going to have any hope of turning this ceasefire into lasting peace." Antares nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle upon him. He had made his choice, forsaking his old life for the promise of something greater. As he stood there, flanked by a human he now called ally and a fellow Bolian he hoped to guide towards understanding, Antares knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The medbay door slid open once more, revealing Governor Hawkins. His face was grim but determined as he surveyed the scene before him. "Gentlemen," he said, addressing both Antares and Brown, "we have work to do. The Bolian High Council is requesting a full briefing, and they've asked to speak with both of you." Antares exchanged a glance with Brown, seeing his own mix of trepidation and drive mirrored in the human's eyes. Together they stepped forward to meet their new destiny, leaving behind the wreckage of old prejudices and embarking on a path that would reshape the future of human-Bolian relations. The journey to Altara was tense, the sleek diplomatic vessel cutting through the inky void of space. Antares sat rigid in his seat, acutely aware of the weight of their mission. Beside him, Sergeant Brown methodically checked and rechecked his plasma rifle, his face a mask of concentration. Governor Hawkins pored over diplomatic briefs, muttering quietly to himself as he prepared for the negotiations ahead. As they entered Altaran airspace, the comm panel crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose," a stern voice demanded. Hawkins leaned forward, his voice steady. "This is Governor Elias Hawkins of the Zephyrus colony. We are here on a diplomatic mission at the request of Counselor Zephyr." A pause then. "Proceed to landing pad Delta 9. Any deviation will be met with lethal force." The ship touched down on a gleaming platform in the heart of Altara Prime. As the boarding ramp lowered, Antares felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. A blur of motion caught his eye. "Down!" he shouted, tackling Hawkins to the ground, as a plasma bolt seared the air where the governor's head had been moments before. Brown's rifle snapped up, his aim true. 2 quick bursts and the hidden assailant tumbled from his perch atop a nearby building. "Zara's fanatics," Antares growled, helping Hawkins to his feet. "They won't give up easily." Security forces swarmed the area, their faces a mix of suspicion and confusion. An older Bolian, in ornate robes, pushed through the crowd, his eyes locking onto Antares. "Counselor Zula," Antares said, inclining his head respectfully. Zula's expression was unreadable. "You've caused quite a stir, Antares. I hope this meeting is worth the risk." The council chambers were cavernous, adorned with holographic displays showcasing the might of the Bolian Empire. Antares stood before the assembled leaders, acutely aware of the hostility radiating from many of them. "Honored counselors," he began, his voice steady, "I come before you with evidence of a betrayal that threatens the very foundation of our empire." A murmur rippled through the chamber as Antares activated a holoprojector. Images flickered to life. Classified reports, surveillance footage, intercepted communications. They painted a damning picture of General Vorlix's machinations. "As you can see," Antares continued, "the general has been systematically distorting intelligence about human activities. His goal is not the protection of our people, but the destabilization of this council." Zula leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "These are grave accusations, Antares. What proof do you have of Vorlix's true intentions?" Before Antares could respond, the chamber doors burst open. General Vorlix strode in, flanked by a cadre of heavily armed soldiers. "Lies and fabrications," Vorlix roared. "This traitor conspires with our enemies to weaken us from within." Chaos erupted. Counselors shouted accusations. Guards raised weapons, uncertainly. In the confusion, Vorlix's men made their move. Antares reacted instinctively, diving towards Zula as plasma bolts lit up the air. He tackled the counselor behind a sturdy podium, shielding him from the barrage. Across the room, Brown had taken up a defensive position, his rifle spitting fire as he covered Hawkins's retreat. "Governor, move!" he shouted, laying down suppressing fire. Antares caught Brown's eye, an unspoken plan forming between them. With a nod, Antares grabbed Zula's arm. "This way, counselor. We need to get you to safety." They fought their way through the chaos, Antares' combat instincts in perfect sync with Brown's sharpshooting. As they reached a hidden exit, Hawkins turned back. "What about the other counselors?" he asked, his face etched with concern. "We can't help them if we're dead," Brown growled, ushering them through the door. "We need to regroup and form a plan." As they hurried through twisting corridors, alarms blared throughout the complex. Vorlix's voice echoed over the public address system, declaring them enemies of the state and calling for their immediate capture. "I know a place," Antares said, leading them deeper into the bowels of the city. "An old safe house from my operative days. We should be able to lay low and make contact with allies." Hours later, huddled in a dimly lit room filled with outdated communications equipment, the gravity of their situation settled in. They were cut off, outgunned, and labeled as traitors to both their peoples. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Antares approached cautiously, weapon ready. He opened it to reveal a face he hadn't seen in years. "Mela," he breathed, recognizing his former mentor. The older Bolian woman's eyes crinkled with a grim smile. "I hear you've gotten yourself into quite a mess, my young apprentice. Perhaps it's time I taught you one last lesson, how to overthrow a despot." As Mela entered, bringing with her a wealth of tactical knowledge and a network of dissident contacts, Antares felt a spark of hope. The odds were still stacked against them, but with this unlikely alliance of humans and Bolians, they had a fighting chance. The real battle for the future of both their civilizations was about to begin. The safe house thrummed with nervous energy as Mela unrolled a holographic map of the capital. Antares leaned in, his eyes tracing the web of streets and fortifications. "Vorlix has turned the city into a fortress," Mela explained, her voice low. "But every fortress has its weak points." Brown studied the layout, his tactical mind already formulating strategies. "If we hit these communication relays simultaneously," he said, pointing to several key nodes, "we could disrupt his command structure." Governor Hawkins frowned. "But that leaves the civilian population vulnerable. We need a plan that minimizes collateral damage." A sudden explosion rocked the building, showering them with dust and debris. Alarms blared as the safe house's security systems engaged. "It seems Vorlix has found us," Antares growled, drawing his weapon. "We're out of time for planning." They burst into the street, immediately caught in a crossfire between Vorlix's troops and pockets of resistance. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the gleaming buildings. "This way!" Mela shouted, leading them down a narrow alley. She tapped a code into a hidden panel, revealing a maintenance tunnel. "These run beneath the entire capital. We can use them to get close to Vorlix's command center." As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, the sounds of battle above grew more intense. Antares could feel the vibrations of heavy weaponry through the tunnel walls. "We're not alone down here," Brown warned, his rifle at the ready. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Vorlix's elite guards. Time seemed to slow as both groups raised their weapons. Antares moved without thinking, diving forward and tackling the lead guard. The tunnel erupted in a chaos of blaster fire and hand-to-hand combat. Brown's precision shots dropped two guards before they could react. Mela moved with fluid grace, her years of experience evident as she disarmed and incapacitated her opponents. As the last guard fell, Antares stood, breathing heavily. "We need to keep moving. They'll have alerted Vorlix to our location." They emerged from the tunnels into the heart of the capital, the imposing silhouette of Vorlix's command center looming before them. The streets were a war zone, with dissident forces clashing against loyalist troops. A familiar voice cut through the din of battle. "Antares!" He turned to see Zara, his former apprentice, leading a group of rebels. Her eyes were hard, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in them. "Zara," Antares said, his voice tight, "have you finally seen the truth of Vorlix's madness?" She hesitated, then nodded grimly. I've seen enough to know we're on the wrong side of history. My tactical skills are yours, if you'll have them. A nearby explosion punctuated her words, reminding them of the urgent task at hand. We need to get inside that command center, Brown said, eyeing the heavily fortified entrance. Mela stepped forward, her face set with perseverance. I know a way, but it won't be easy. As they moved to follow her lead, Antares caught sight of a figure on a nearby rooftop. His blood ran cold as he recognized General Vorlix, a cruel smile twisting his features. The general raised a weapon, aiming directly at Mela. Antares shouted a warning, but it came too late. A blinding flash of energy erupted from Vorlix's weapon. Mela crumpled to the ground, a smoking hole in her chest. No! Antares cried out, rushing to his mentor's side. He cradled her head, feeling the life ebbing from her body. Mela's eyes flickered open, meeting Antares' gaze. The data rod, she whispered, pressing a small device into his hand. It contains everything. Use it to bring peace. With a final shuddering breath, Mela went still. Antares felt a piece of himself die with her. As grief threatened to overwhelm him, Brown's steady hand gripped his shoulder. We have to move, Antares. Her sacrifice won't be in vain. Antares stood, his grief crystallizing into razor-sharp focus. He turned to the others, his eyes burning with a fierce grit. Vorlix dies today, he said, his voice cold and certain. For Mela, for all of us. They advanced on the command center, the data rod a weight of responsibility in Antares' pocket. The final confrontation loomed before them, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.